Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Alabama Black. My name is Mary Bell, and I am the program manager at Kentuck Art Center. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Kentuck Art Center, we are a 501c3 nonprofit located in Northport, Alabama, and our mission is to perpetuate the arts, to engage the community, and to empower the artist. 2021 is Kentuck's 50th anniversary, and to celebrate this milestone in our history, we have structured our programming and our exhibitions around the theme of memory. How we remember events, how collective memory can shift and influence us, and the importance of art in telling and remembering these stories. We began our year of exhibitions with a show entitled Good Trouble, Civil Rights Past and Present, which featured 9 Black Alabama artists and their memories and stories about the civil rights movement and their experiences as it did and is still happening. Tonight, we continue to engage with the art of the Black South with the performances of our 5 panelists, addressing the real experiences and realities of pain and or struggles related to culture, history, memory, and creativity for the past 5 decades. These performances may address some sensitive topics that are not appropriate for children under 18. So throughout the panel, feel free to interact with us through the chat. And if you'd like to ask a question, please use the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of your screen. There's also a donate button if you would like to help Kentuck continue the work that we are doing. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Robin M. Boylorn, Kentuck's primary humanities scholar for the 2021 exhibition season, The Mystic Chords of Memory. Dr. Boylorn is a professor of interpersonal and intercultural communication at the University of Alabama, and she is the author of Sweetwater, Black Women and Narratives of Resilience. She curated and will be moderating this panel, and she is committed to a life that prioritizes social justice, rooted in love, self-care, and accountability. Now let's welcome Dr. Boylorn.
Thank you. So I want to thank everybody for participating and logging on tonight. Tonight is about celebrating not just the Black South, but the art it produces and the lived experiences and realities that inspire it. The title of the panel, Alabama Black, was inspired by the summary of this season's inaugural exhibit, Good Trouble, Civil Rights Past and Present. When I came across the words Alabama Black artist, it struck me. First, with how I would have phrased it differently, but then with how perfectly it felt as a characterization of how and why we do art, which is informed by not just our identity, but also by our location. Alabama Black art is unique in the same way that North Carolina Black, Florida Black, Georgia Black are all alike and different at the same time. This panel is about making connections across time, borders, and seemingly disparate selves. We are talking about intergenerational legacies, traumas, histories, and realities that are so often erased or unspoken, housed in the Blackness of it all. We are connecting art to scholarship, self to memory, and performance to community. Alabama Black is a freedom song and a clarion call. It's a love letter and a pink slip, a history lesson and a prophecy. Like Sankofa, these story depictions look back and forward, capturing and picking up what was left behind, lost, or forgotten. Sometimes that's the story itself, and other times that's the truth, held secret in plain sight. This Alabama is Black and South like homemade love, made at home while making ourselves at home with ourselves. This deep South Black is Alabama like crimson, tied like ribbons across differences. It is challenging and channeling justice. It's channeling justice and self-actualization by bridging experience with education. This South of Maya Angelou, this Black of MLK. this South of Angela Davis, this Black of Lynthia Edwards, this South of Sir Krista Artist, this Black of Salem Green, this South of E. Patrick Johnson, this Black of Yvonne Wells, this South of Bell Hooks, this Black of Molefi Asante, this South of Ida B. Wells, this Black of Ruth and Tamika Robinson, this South of That's So G's Bend, this Black of Bernice Sims, this South of Trudeer Harris, this Black of Tony Bingham, this South of Jesmond Ward, this Black of Bernard Wright, this South of Regina Bradley, this Black of Darius Hill, this South of Brian Stevenson, this Black of Johnny Moore, this South of Kiese Lehman, this Black of Thornton Dial, this South of Mary Hooks, this Black of Mary Weems. I welcome you to this South, this Alabama, Black. A panel designed to weave together performances of Black storied art over the past 5 decades. So keep in mind that each panelist was invited to create a piece grounded in and or inspired by their assigned decade, the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, and the 2000s and the 2010s. Their offerings serve as witness to the power of story, art, and history in our collective memory and recovery. Kiana Cutskibbins, Roderick Borisade, Allison Upshaw, Erika Eileen Wade, and Jahman Hill will now introduce themselves.
Now, who in the hell said that all Southern Belles were white girls? Y'all can kiss my grits. Hey y'all, my name is Dr. Kiana Cutskibbins. I'm an educator, poet, playwright, chandler, a country cosmopolitan, honey and hot sauce, the eclectic girl raised in the South where eclectic grits, the daughter of Kathy and Earl, born in Tuscaloosa, raised in West Blockton, the granddaughter of Fred and Betty Cutts. I am the tri-state queen, having lived in Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi. And according to the amazing Dr. Regina Bradley, I am one of the first ladies of Alabama. And like Margaret Walker, I write for my people. And like Sonia Sanchez, I write for my homegirls who hold hand grenades in their mouths. And like Nikki Giovanni, sometimes I write because I just be ego tripping. Like Zora Neale Hurston, I always write with my eyes watching God. I write for Southern Baptist Sundays, street lights and candy ladies and kudzu and honeysuckle and football and long speeches at church and Easter and bebops. I write for my 7th grade teacher, Mrs. Martin, the Black Southern belle who said to me was her deepest Southern twang, "Now, Qiana, don't you let those boys be mean to you." But I always write for my mama, because every word of every line of every poem make up the flowers that I'm giving to her while she's still here.
My grandma was from Andalusia, Alabama. My grandpa was from Dawson, Georgia. They met in 1962 in Jacksonville, Florida, and created my mom, Patricia. My mom suffered childhood traumas that sent her life into a downward spiral right into the 80s when I was born. And crack had taken over the United States and the Black communities. My mom was swallowed up by the crack epidemic. She became addicted for 21 years. I wrote poetry to save my life when I was dealing with all the traumas that were the result of my mom's actions. I began to tell my story in a series of rhymes, poems, and it worked. It saved my life. And now I continue to write to help others and tell that story so that others know exactly what happened and understand and have compassion for addicts, children of addicts, and humanity in general. So, my name is Odd Rod because I defeated the odds.
am Dr. Allison Upshaw, trained opera singer, professional actress, and assistant professor of voice at Stillman College. I am from walking barefoot over hot pavement in the summertime. I am from hot flaky biscuits and mouth-watering fried chicken. I'm from third Sunday big meeting. I'm from calling hogs and riding horses in the Black Belt of Alabama. I'm from being related to everyone who lives within a mile radius of my house. I'm from being called fat and fine by Cousin Mayella. I am from Alice Adams Upshaw, a former high school teacher with a master's degree in education and now surviving Alzheimer's. I am from Clara Lewis Adams, former domestic worker with a third grade education. I am from Henry Lewis, farmer. I am from Jim Lewis, freed slave.
Memories are truths in their own way. I remember the first day I fell in love with writing. I was very young and enamored by the big personalities in my family. We told stories instead of exchanging cards. Our love language is memory, in a lot of ways. I am Erika E. a lasting memory, a stone cold fox, a fearless flyer, and a keeper of stories. In this lifetime, I've graced historic stages in New York and barefoot backyards in California. I tend to take home wherever I go, you know. My company is named for my mother. It produces real, adaptable, and conscious multimedia experiences. We think it and we create a world. But here's the voices of our own.
Fill a room with melody and see if it don't become bouquet. See if it don't wrap around what the this time with energy. My mama's from Birmingham, Alabama, and my daddy's mama's from Crawfordsville, Georgia, where I write about the flourish. This idea that Black people are infinitely possible beings. I believe with all of my heart that you are enough, that you are the flourish, that there are sirens in the background. I'm trying to be me. That's not me. I'm not I'm more like you feel me? Ah, didn't see you there. Hello. I'm thinking way too hard about it. All right. Yo, wait. The name of this is Alabama Black. And I live in Alabama. And I'm Black. My name is Jahman Hill. I was born in Rochester, New York, raised in Kansas, and I claim Birmingham like a stepchild whose stepmama is Beyonce. Yeah. I feel like that's it. I feel like that's the one.
Black in the 70s by Kiana Cutskibbins. Oh, you're from Alabama. Do you know about Birmingham, Dynamite Hill? The civil rights movement happened there, right? And Martin Luther King Jr., right? Right? It's racist, right? And the people are like slower, right? It's like rural, right? You know what I mean. That's what I read. That's what's in the movies. Right. Yeah, that's Alabama. It's all true, right? I'm just trying to understand you. Tell me about the 1960s and Black Alabama, Alabama Black. I'm just trying to understand you. Tell me about the movement. Tell me about Alabama Black.
So it's farewell to the 60s. Perhaps not the best decade in history, but certainly not the worst either. There may be good reason to look back in anger, but perhaps because of what happened in the 60s, there may also be reason to look forward in hope. Let's hope so anyway.
December 31st, 1969, ABC News wrapping up a time. So it's farewell to the 60s, perhaps not the best decade in history, but not the worst either. I wondered how worst was defined and wasn't a believer. From the Birmingham campaign to the bombing on 16th Street, from Bloody Sunday in Selma to the murder of Martin Luther King, worst was relative, defined by context. A simple farewell couldn't undo the terror of white resistance. Thursday, January 1st, 1970. As I prepared to write about the residue of the unrest, I did my research, read, watched, listened to the detail first. Billed as the post-civil rights era, the 1970s brought change, but even celebrated Governor Albert Brewer sought to, quote, resist school integration in a legal, affirmative way. Alabama Black students at Butler High School said no to the Confederate flag, rebel mascot, lyrics to Dixie, staged walkouts and protests, Black pride in tow. Lowndes County Freedom Organization, Black Panther influence from deep. Merged with the Alabama Democratic Party, Hewlett elected to the sheriff's seat. The integrated USC took the Alabama football team for a 42-21 ride. Then John Mitchell and Wilbur Jackson were recruited Black players for the Tide. Fred Gray, Thomas Reed, first Black legislature since Reconstruction. Hank Aaron wrote Dave's record, and 8 years later joined Mobile Satchel Paige, Hall of Fame induction.
What a marvelous moment for Atlanta and the state of Georgia. What a marvelous moment for the country and the world. A Black man is getting a standing ovation in the Deep South for breaking a record of an all-time baseball idol. And it is a great moment for all of us, and particularly for Henry Aaron, who was met at home plate not only by every member of the Braves, but by his father and mother. He threw his arms around his father, and as he left the home plate area, his mother came running across the grass, threw her arms around his neck, kissed him for all she was worth. As
Richard Arrington took leadership from then. 1979, first Black mayor of Birmingham. Birmingham to Birmingham, Birmingham to Birmingham. I wrote and deleted, doubted the words, and sure of the story that needed to be heard. So I called my mother. Alabama born, raised, and living. Asked what she loved and remembered about the 70s that was life-giving. She said, wearing my afro and halter top with my bell-bottom jeans, lipsticks and parties and hoop earrings. And let's not forget that's the decade I became a mother. The 70s were, as the kids say, lit for me like no other. The smile in her voice reminded me to look for the joy in the decade, because Black joy and Alabama Black in the 70s were Black Alabama made. Alabama creatives and artists showed up in state and across the globe. Alabama Black stories of Black joy, love, and thriving were told. Because Patches, I'm depending on you, son. Clarence Carter from the Gump. People all over the world, join hands. The because the love train was born in Bessemer, Alabama Black in every space, nurturing successors. 7 albums by the Commodores, Lionel Richie from Tuskegee, Birmingham on Broadway, Give Me a Break, Nell Ruth Hardy, Big Mama Thornton, Telling the Way It Is, from Monroe State Prison, Sassy Mama Was Given. Before the Alabama Space and Rocket Center dedication, graphic display of men's entering the cosmic age, Alabama Black's Sun Ra, then cosmic, futuristic, travels to Egypt, recognizing that space is and been the place. Johnson Hair Products, Essence and Black Enterprise, Beverly Johnson, the cover girl, No Place to Be, Somebody, Pulitzer Prize. Remembering the struggle, honoring the progress, 1970s Alabama Black. Black joy, Black art, Black creativity, Black flourish in excess.
To be honest, I've never lived with my mom alone. Like the times that I've seen her, I was at my grandmother's house, so it was kind of like in and out, and I would have to go visit her like every other weekend. So I could say there are many times I hated it. I didn't want to be there. So 7, 8, 9. So I was like 9. You know what I mean? Like I remember living with my mom, and it just being like 2 of us, and she would stay out. Or I would wake up and she wouldn't be home. And then she'd come home, you know, and I couldn't tell anybody. You know, it was just like, if I wake up and nobody's there, just lock the door and stay in the house, you know, and I could do that. You know, I thought I was tough. And she would disappear. Like she would be there, and when she was supposed to get off work at 5, 6 o'clock and be home, like, I'm like, where's mom? It's like 9 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to bed, I gotta go to school in the morning. Where's she at?
Probably about 6 or 7. Yeah, I'd be at home by myself. You know, I had 15. When I leave the house, don't open the door for nobody. I don't care who it is. Everything going on while I was in high school, and then she ended up going to jail, so she went to jail, and I moved in with my grandma, and I just never went back home.
I knocked on the next door neighbor's door, and she's like, well, you know what happened? She wanted to, all I know is a whole bunch of cops come. So they come, they check on our welfare, and I see my mother walking up with a guy who I assumed was my dad, because I never knew my dad went to jail. I didn't know anything about my dad. Walked up to a fence, like way over, and look, see the cops, see them with holding my hand, and she sees them, and I just remember her walking away.
The rising sun embraced her face, her fingers through the fence. She put her kids to bed and left, and hadn't seen them since. Suspended since chills throughout her spine, she watches from below. She's made it back, but not on time to be a mother. So, the agents gather toys and clothes and sippy cups and shoes. The kids awaken quite surprised and wipe their eyes and views. Little fists with big old tears that trail along the floor. Strangers' hands have packed their things and stacked them by the door. Mama down below without strength to intervene. Turns away and goes, but doesn't realize she's seen. Her daughter at the window, purple blanket on her sleeve, cries for her to come, not understanding why she leaves, not understanding how she grieves. Some of this is not her fault. She knew that they would lock her up if she came up to talk. She entertains the thought, but shame and fear control her legs. She knew that she'd get jail time when she needed help. Instead, she drags her feet and dreads the choice she feels she has to make to get her life together. It is best she walk away. Her uncontrolled mistakes don't look so great with their decisions. The judge will give a lecture just before he gives the sentence. Thoughts to make her better, he gonna place her in the system and attach a lengthy record about the years she spent in prison. The story, all too common, she was one within a million. Parents in the 80s slammed on backs and apprehended. Parents in the 80s who chose crack to cope with feelings. Parents in the 80s who were black and lost their children. Punished for addiction to a substance that could kill them. And all apparent illness was in fact a parent's illness.
Just like it takes you to a mental state that you don't want to be at. Right. And it puts you in a lot of fear. If you're strong, when you fight get through you, you're gonna be weak. That's where weakness comes in. That's where it beats you down at. You know, it was like my mind. Mentally, I felt bad because I wanted to go home to my kids, and then my kids needed me.
Had some sneakers with no names we did, some faults in our appearance. Some kids within a circle taking turns to break our spirits. We ain't know that we were different till we had to step outside. And we were tortured in the lunchrooms and on buses we would ride, with jokes that felt like missiles and chuckles. Chuckles felt like feet. Stampedes of their laughter formed to sink our self-esteem. They used to call us crack babies. And we stood with no rebuttals. We wondered how the others knew what we knew of each other. My sister and my brother, back and forth we were. Had to switch our schools and lose our friends because of her. Had to throw our fists when kids were cool because of her. Nothing that we did was ever cool because of her. Found us in the streets breaking some rules because of her. But learned about those drugs and never used because of her. And they used to call us crack babies. Because of her, they called us that. Said that we grow up and become nothing's made from scratch because our parents turned their backs and we were products of their lack. And there was little you could add to kids who only knew subtract. Crack babies, what they called us, and I envisioned porcelain dolls with breaks along their face like varicose veins along the walls. We weren't crack babies at all, but they made us like we were. They say the apple don't fall far, so we were destined to be heard. We had to formulate a thesis to break us from those leashes, for some things that are cracked are never meant to fall to pieces. For what they didn't know was mama, she got clean to have her kids. Never once did she involve us in the risky things she did, and I'm not sure just how she did it. Such a strong and hard commitment. It's like she saw that she was pregnant, put us first, and then she quit it. Because of her, we fight much harder. All 3 sons and all 3 daughters. We got a light that shines much brighter from a past that dimmed much darker. I stand before you with these poems that was once my book of vows. I vowed to reach the highest me, so crack that baby open now. Yes, crack that baby open now and see we made it. Yes, we have. It's like we reached our destination to appreciate the path, and that journey made us stronger. We're a float that fought the ocean. We show a crack may mean we're damaged, but it doesn't. It doesn't mean we're broken. Mama, remember when you said you wish you could write Oprah? I knew what you were saying. We had a moment on that sofa. I had the attention of a cobra in the presence of a charmer. I saw me as your crop. I saw you as my farmer. Every mother in this world believes their baby is a star, so they push them to pianos and they stick them with guitars. But mom, you wanted Oprah, and I imagined with you that moment, thinking if I had the chance, my confidence would let me own it. You watched me overcome opponents, even when you stood as one. I used to hate to pass you by out on the streets when I was young. When I was young, I took my writing and used that to save my life. I took a suicidal poem and wrote away from suicide. I know you'd love to contact Oprah. You are not the best at letters. I see you looking at the phone as if a call would be much better. You want the world to know you're helper. You say the city's not enough, for there are folks who grab your ankles when they see you rising up. You say that if we contact Oprah, you get far, son, you get far. And I can't wait for you to show the world what soldiers do with scars, or what walkers do with cars, or what drivers do with planes. You let these people know your story. If they never know your name, you show the world what you've been through, baby. And I'm gonna contact Oprah. I wanted this when you were young and want it more now that you're older. You have more angels on your shoulder. I've been clean for many years.
Used to walk the streets alone at night with dreams of being here. Had no idea of all the hurt I caused. I'm sorry for the strife. I'm overjoyed you took the pain and made yourself a better life. I ain't the best of writers writing, got no diploma from no school, but everything I never did, I feel I've done it all through you. You best believe I'm gon' write Oprah. Might not spell my words correct, but you will understand my heart because that's all that I have left. I've been to jail and I've been back. I got some friends that still on crack. I drive the streets I've walked, and that is proof that God will build from scratch. And I know just what you mean, Mama. Your journey made us closer. You don't forget the ride because you made it off the coaster. I wrote my story out on paper. Now they put my face on posters. I show up at all my shows like, Mama, I can't wait to show us. We've had the very best of life. We have some chapters closed and over in a book that'll say some lies, Mama, even if we don't reach Oprah.
It will open a lot of people's eyes to what being on drugs really is like. So many people have told their story. I haven't had a chance to tell mine. I need somebody to tell my story. I need my soul to reach the people that haven't been reached.
Because they'll shoot us if we do, and shoot us if we don't, kill us if we will, and even if we won't, they'll shoot us if we do, and shoot us if we don't, kill us if we will, and even if we won't. No other choice, 'cause they don't hear our voice, so riot. No other choice, they don't hear our voice, riot is all we can do.
barbaric, sadistic, racist police brutality in our OCD from engine 14 and 53.
Riot because our pain is tangible and yet they turn their backs.
I'm really angry and I'm really very scared. You know, I just spent the last 10 years of my life in college, but it doesn't really matter because even with a briefcase in my hand and a suit on my back, I'm still just another nigger to the cops out there. Attention all units, the city is now mobilized. Attention all units, the city is now mobilized.
Walking wounded, we're invisible unless we're victims on attack.
If I go into a store on videotape and steal a Twinkie, I'm going to jail for 6 months, okay? You got 4 guys on videotape, obviously savagely beating someone, and they get off. I'm black, they're white. You know, what's happening here?
Riot because they're afraid of us. Never mind that they are weak. No longer riding on the back of the bus. But still, we have no peace.
Strong reaction coming in. The verdicts in the Rodney King beating trial. 4 police defendants are acquitted on all but 1 count.
To come back completely whitewashing something that the whole world witnessed. This is a brutalization of truth.
For having this verdict, what these people have done, they like to reduce to a bomb.
Let them learn our language, the value of our disquiet.
LAPD has just told me that they have ordered all police helicopters and all LAPD cruisers out of this area.
Customers at a Unical gas station have been robbed. Their cars have been damaged. Rocks have been thrown.
We're tired of dying for nothing, so
There was email black, breaking windows.
As I wait for the panelists, the first 3 panelists to join me, I think we just need to sit with that. That was a lot. Powerful, heavy, beautiful, reflective, generative. So I am waiting for Qiana and Roderick and Allison to join me. Here is Roderick. We're just waiting for, okay, and there is Dr. Upshaw, and we are waiting for Dr. Gibbons. How y'all feeling? Roderick, Allison, how you feeling?
Good.
Take it as you feel bare, laid bare, feeling exposed? How you feel?
It's rewarding to see other eyes, new eyes on the things that I feel that we've been preaching for a long time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Kiana is saying she's getting an error message. Can we maybe send her an invitation again? Okay, so as we're waiting for Qiana to join us, I'm going to start by asking you guys some questions. I was going to ask her first because I was going to kind of go in this order of 70s, 80s, 90s, but I think that, I'm a little bit less, there she is, I'm a little bit less Come on, mama. Okay. Hey.
The whole afro out here.
The whole afro.
Hey, y'all.
Come on, 70s. I won't ready. Well, I was just about to say, yes.
Okay.
And I was just about to say that I was gonna start with you, so now I can, since you were able to get in. And essentially, I want to know what made your piece Alabama and what makes it Black. But I also want to know what inspired it, like what experiences or what themes in the 70s inspired this particular iteration performance.
So I chose the 70s because I feel like I grew up in the 90s. I was born in the 70s, but coming of age in the 90s. So I said, I want to choose the 70s because that's a decade that I probably don't know as much about, and probably knew more about Alabama in the 60s than 70s. So for me, what inspired the piece is I was doing all this research about what was going on in Alabama or people from Alabama and what was happening in the 70s. And I called my mom. And I was like, hey, what do you remember the most about the 70s? And she said, wearing my afro, which is why I have this afro wig on from my mom. But she said, wearing my afro, my halter tops and my bell-bottom jeans and having fun. And then it dawned on me, Qiana, you are missing a whole segment of the 70s. I was so focused on I think the violence against Black people in the 70s that I had forgotten about focusing on the joy. So for me, that conversation with my mom was what inspired me to switch my thinking and say, hey, what was some of the joy that Black people had in the 70s?
Yeah, and I loved that. I feel it makes me want to kind of move to Roderick and Allison just to ask about, because I felt like there was, like Qiana, kind of tapped into some joy. Do you think, but your pieces felt less joyful, right? Was that intentional? And I guess we can start, whoever wants to speak first. Dr. Allison.
Yeah, mine was intentional because when I started looking at, I wanted to know what civil unrest was going on, because what mine was based on was that Martin Luther King Jr. quote, that riot is the language of the unheard. And I wanted to start there, and I started looking up riots and realizing that actually the 90s, we know about the Rodney King riots, but there were riots in Tampa. There was riots in New York. There were riots in DC. There were all of these riots happened in the 90s. And so I felt like that for me was the big takeaway, that people were not just sitting on their thumbs and, twiddling their thumbs, waiting for something to happen. People responding to what was happening. And that really made a connection for me with what was happening now.
Right. Yes. I can't wait to think about your piece on the 90s in comparison to the 2010s, because we can even think about it in the 2020s, and we 1 year in, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to preach though. Roderick, where was the joy in your piece?
There was no joy in the 80s for me as a child, and as you heard in the beginning of my piece, you heard several other children of addicts who were left at home. And that's what I wanted to capture, is how many children were left alone because of this drug, and how much of an illness that it was. Indeed, when I was younger, I didn't see it as an illness. It was just like mama was gone. So I didn't have joy at all. And I wanted to represent that when you in the Black community is synonymous with the 80s and crack. When you mention the 80s, the first thing you see, because that's when it was brought out, and that's all you can think about. It was such a wave, and that's all I wanted to capture. That's all I knew. It still affects my family, still affects people today.
Yeah. So Qiana, what was Alabama and what was Black about the 70s? About your iteration of the 70s?
Oh my gosh, everything. I think a couple of the instances, like with Hank Aaron, even though he was, in Atlanta at the time, he was from Alabama. With Nell Carter, and I don't know, like I grew up watching Give Me a Break, and and I remember being a teenager, like that was one of the first people I knew of who was from Alabama. So, when people would try to talk trash about Alabama, I was like, but Nell Carter's from Alabama, because I loved Give Me a Break. But then I also, learned about her work on Broadway and just her performance in general. So that, and then Big Mama Thornton. Listen, when I tell you that I've listened to a couple of her pieces before I started writing this piece, but since I wrote this piece, when I tell you that I'm just like, where is the Big Mama Thornton story? Like, I need to see that story. I don't know who needs to play her, but someone needs to write it, because when I hear her voice, I'm like, that is Alabama. That is Alabama. And Clarence Carter, like all the music and things that I grew up listening to that I didn't really pay attention to in terms of them being so Southern and so Alabama. And now, like living in Atlanta, like Atlanta is the South. It is the South, but it's a different type of South than the South that I grew up in. It's the South, but it's not Southern in that same way. So for me, talking about all of those different aspects with the arts and creativity, and talking about like space, so this Afrofuturistic, like all of these things came from people who were born in Alabama, born and or raised in Alabama. So I enjoyed that aspect of the piece. And opening the 70s with USC beating Alabama. And like Robin, I'm an Alabama fan when it comes to football, but watching the ESPN story about that whole scenario with USC coming in and basically ushering in a new era for Black players at the University of Alabama was just, an experience for me, and I loved learning so much about my home state.
Yes, and the poem, I don't know what the name of it was that you wrote, that had right, like that questioning back and forth, was that emblematic of actual things people say or assume about the South, right?
Yes, that is emblematic. It's so funny. I don't know if she's on, but I remember my friend Bettina Love and Corey Davis, we all went to Georgia State together in undergrad. And I remember we were having this conversation one time, and I can't remember who said it, but Corey's from New Jersey and Tina's from New York. And so one of them said something about being country. And at the time, like if you're born and raised in Alabama, country doesn't mean you have a twang. Country means something different to people in and from Alabama than it does to other people. So I remember we were in class and I wrote this whole poem about being from Alabama and loving Alabama and being country and loving it. And I don't even remember what the poem was, but I do remember that the last line was, Southern born and Southern bred, I'm gonna be this way until I'm dead. So so I thought about that as I was writing the poem. It's like, at the end of the day, like I legit will fight you about the South, and I will critique it as much as it needs to be critiqued. But it's like, this is house business. I will fight you about the South, for real.
That's right. And Allison, I know that you are from Alabama, and your introduction, both of yours and Qiana's were kismet, right? The ways in which you introduced yourselves as Southern Alabama women. But also I'm thinking about music and the connection that Qiana made to music. And I'm thinking about this voice, Dr. Upshaw, right? So can you tell us a little bit about these songs and this poetry and this voice, Like sometimes I just want you to talk to me, sing to me, like I could listen to you read a grocery list. Like when I first met Dr. Upshaw, she had come to ask me for something. If she would have emailed, I probably would have said nah. But her voice, man, I was like, whatever you need me to do, I got you, right? But tell us a little bit about what you created, like, and how you created it. Did you write these songs? Was it based on poetry? Like, what was this art? How did you create your art?
So I found this poem that I really liked, and I wanted to set it to music, and I couldn't find the poet. I couldn't find this man. I was like looking, and I was like, you know what? You're getting on my nerves, so I'm going to write my own damn poem. So I was like, okay, I'm not a poet, but I'm going to write my own poem. So I wrote the poem, and I talked to a friend of mine, Dana Rice, and I was like, okay, Dana, I got these poems. Can you help me? What I wanted was something that reflected my classical training. Because one of the things that we don't know about or tend to think about in the South is that Coretta Scott was trained as an opera singer before she married Martin. He met her in graduate school. So she is from the Black Belt, like I'm from the Black Belt. So here we are growing up in Alabama, two country folk singing opera in the middle of nowhere. Where, you know, and I wanted that little piece to be in there too. And I wanted, because Alabama is all, when we talk about country, we think ignorant, right? And we don't give ourselves enough credit for the wisdom that we bring to the table, that our grandmothers and grandfathers have brought to the table, right? And that all Black isn't the same. All Alabama Black isn't the same. Some of us riot quiet.
Right.
You know, and I wanted that to be a juxtaposition on the images and the fact that some people are loud and speak out loud and cry out loud and fight and do that work. Some of us do quiet writing. And what is that like?
Oh, I'm here for that. Quiet riot. Yes,
like
that's a
that.
poem. Rod gonna write a poem about it. So, Roderick, tell us. I know you will. I know you will. So tell us a little bit about, you know, like, I know a little bit about your storied lineage to Alabama, but tell us what makes your story Alabama and what makes it Black.
It's my grandma. She was so important. She's from Andalusia, Alabama, and she went down to Jacksonville, Florida, met my grandpa, and created my mama, who I wrote the stories about. People were worried about me coming back to Alabama for grad school. Like, some of my family was like, don't, be careful of it. I'm coming from Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville, Florida is racist. All right. And so when I got here, I felt nothing but home since I've been here, to be honest with you. I feel my grandma's spirit. I'm all Alabama. I'm all about Alabama. I love every bit of it. I'm country. I'm from Africa. I'm from Alabama. I'm from Jacksonville. All of this stuff is just, it's wonderful. And I embrace my country, believe it.
And so what makes it Black? Because I think that when we think about, you know, the crack epidemic in particular, it feels very racialized, you know, and you and I have talked about the distinction between crack and the opioid crisis, right? And why one feels it has gotten more empathy than the other, right? So can you talk a little bit about what made the 80s crack epidemic in particular that you speak about Black, relevant to Black?
It was another chance for people to create villains out of people who were ill, now that I look at it. Now, again, we say opioid and get help. I actually speak at all places all across the country to be the help, but there was nobody speaking for people who had crack addictions, namely my mom. And after doing all the research, it pretty much was, it affected the Black community more than anything. If you find someone who was white on crack, they exist, but when you see it, it's kind of like an anomaly. You're like, what is that? Who they know to get into that, you know? But it definitely affected the Black community immensely. And that's crack and Black and all of that stuff. It was, it's so much, it dug deep, and it hurt to do the research. But after looking at it all and realizing that people were hurt before the epidemic happened, and so it attached to most people who were already hurting, it made more sense than anything. We've been hurting forever. The crack epidemic just was an escape for us, and we didn't know it would take us away.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think that work is so important, because when we usually the visuals of the crack epidemic is set in more urban northern landscapes. So you kind of forget that it was also happening in the South, for sure.
Yeah.
So the final question that I'm going to ask as we wrap up this quick session is, what if any connections did you guys find between the work you did and the work of your co-panelists here of the latter 20th century? Did you see any overlaps, any
Pain.
pain?
It's hard being Black.
Listen, it is. Qiana, I think you're muted. I don't know if you're intentionally muted, but I feel like you probably got something to say, because I feel like,
hold on.
There you go. I hear you now. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted, but you had unmuted, but now you're muted again. There you go. Oh, you went again. I don't know what you're doing, Mama. There you go. Okay, there you go. Talk. Okay. Oh, wait. What is it? Okay, talk.
I don't know. I muted myself because I was doing too much of the amen corner, like it was Sunday service. So I was like, let me mute myself so I don't interrupt other people while they're speaking. But I think for me, like, the connection was just the truth in all of the stories, whether we were talking about Black joy or Black pain. All of it was just true to our experience. So all of the, the creativity with the artists that I talked about, and just the, Black people finding our joy and making sure that we always had joy, that was a true experience, as was the crack epidemic, and as was everything that we saw in Dr. Allison's piece as well. So for me, the connecting thread was that the Black experience is a diverse experience, sometimes a painful experience, sometimes a joy experience, but always a truthful experience.
Yeah. Beautiful. Allison.
I think for me, my visualization is a coin, that it's the two sides of a coin, that there's pain, but there's also joy. There's joy in being Black. There's pain in being Black. There's pain and joy in being human. And that's what we are. We are human. And sometimes I think we are othered so that people forget that we are human. And sometimes I think we forget. We put so much on ourselves that we forget that we are human. And that, it's okay to experience joy in the midst of pain.
Yeah.
I think that's
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And hope through it all. So thank you guys so much. We are going to now move to the second part, the second, what do we call this? Second scenes. So we're going to move into the 21st century. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. What do I remember about the early 2000s? Cross? 2010s, maybe, I don't know. Soldier Boy, yes, that is something I remember. Okay, let's take that down. Dance Crave. Okay. Now, this is when I asked the question, I'm not gonna lie, like, I could dance. I'm going to tell the truth. Table that one. Politics, yeah. Okay, some heavy things, that I was not interested in at the time. butterfly clips. Okay, we're getting somewhere, or we're really. Do I even have anything impactful to say about the early 2000s? What if it's not even about books popular? What if it's just about what? What if it's just about me? All right. It was 2002. When I fell in love with you. Hey, black girl. Riding round town way past your curfew. Okay. What if wow. What if I just go through old memories? I'm going to call this Y2K memories. Let's get real. Okay, let's go to Facebook, where you find all the information of the past. Which one of these? Okay. Say some good stuff. Family cookout. All right, so maybe not. Ooh. Okay, black and white. Shades. Yes. Wow. Okay. This is a little kind of weird. I look so confident. In these pictures, it just feels like I knew who I was, but why did I feel the need to question that? What if I could bring just a little bit of that confidence back? If the early 2000s were me at my boldest and brightest, then what decade did I let myself shrink to get so small that I criticize a former version of me? Damn. I didn't think this assignment would get that deep. She's so strong and so bold. I this girl is still somewhere inside of me. Like, if she met me now, would she think this was who she was going to grow up to be? Would she be proud? Would she run back to these memories? Or am I now more alluring? Is this me I've become worth these Y2K memories? Would she be proud of me? Proud of all the hard work and the dedication that it takes to maintain her legacy. I mean, to be silly and professional and intersectional, it's me. When I think about the early 2000s, I think about a creation story. My thoughts, my passion, my power, my city, my heart. I think she'd be proud of me. I think that she'd know her foundation is my art. I think I learned a lot.
I've been known to twerk for Jesus, Duke tooted in surrender, hands on knees in prayer, and there is nothing wrong with this. When gospel music turns my body into an instrument of praise, and I can't help but use every part of me if the body is a temple, then why can't this booty free and bouncing be holy? It already got a hole. Did David not become even more undignified than this? Have those touched by God not torn off clothes and lie prostrate? And I'll be the first to tell you, I can't twerk. I can't turn the other cheek when I don't have much to begin with. But there's a story in the Bible, y'all, of this woman who gave everything she had to God. 2 very small copper keys. So I won't be ashamed of these 2 very small copper cheeks. I mean, why can't my shame be sacrificed? Us Christians, so quick to judge, know the law so well, we do everything but forgive. Forget the grace bestowed onto us. Be so focused on sin that wonder why our children end up in sin. Like that ain't the only thing we talk about in the church, at home, with the belt and the rod. Christian kids know the rod, know God's wrath, better than God's love, are told to cover up as if clothes were the first sign of sin. Sometimes the most saintly got serpent tongues. But the first commandment is love. And the second is love. And Jesus said we must be like the children, so here I am. Duke tooted in surrender, hands on knees in prayer, not caring what the adults might think. Giving everything I've got to God, these 2 very small copper keys. And you best believe that I'll become even more undignified than this. Every now and then I post Black Lives Matter on Facebook. I imagine this is the best way to do a spring cleaning of my friends list. That some of my friends from back home will wonder why I strap this rhetorical bomb to my chest and go running head first through they pasty-ass newsfeed. So they delete me before I detonate. Before I leave dark-skinned debris all over their convoluted consciousness. See, the pale fear a paroxysm of Black Lives Matter. Because to matter is to exist, and they'd rather not discuss matters of the flesh. Reminders of our human state, the fact that we are not gods, that their imperfections loose colored blood all over our lily white streets. So I guess we are the terrorists, the The way we arrive with the blood of others on our hands and the names of the slaughtered on our tongues. The way we peddle videos of public executions and ask, who's next? The way our leaders are always publicly executed and we painted as terrorists, painted as enemies of the state, because for our lives to matter would be to kill the American dream. I mean, the dream can't exist without a few nightmares, a few monsters, a few zombies. Why do you think half the black people in the news are the dead ones? Why do you think half our poems got ghostwriters? Why do you think they compare Chicago to Iraq? In both instances, a white government creates borders, keeps us in said borders, gives us guns, and then calls us violence. Says we always killing each other. Use that as an excuse to pump our bodies with bullets, but I guess we are the terrorists, the way we always coming back, stronger, different, changed. We be black identity extremists, claiming Black Lives Matter even after you've extinguished them time and time and time again. We still here, we still ready for war, might as well call us Thanos. You should have aimed for the head. Now watch me snap my fingers and bring half our fallen back to life to terrorize you in every way you are afraid of, like by living and existing and holding cookouts in Oakland and using the bathroom at Starbucks and embodying excellence all over your convoluted consciousness, all over your lily white streets, all over your pasty ass news feed. Before I tell you my story, let me ask you this question. If the body is a temple, can a temple be a body? How many times have we passed the day, left there to rot? Wealth, such in everything, passed down from generation to generation to generation, like power, like stories, like sickness, like ghosts, like here, where I'm from. Not gentrification, but the moments before the wreckage of what once was and will be we, black. It's so beautiful. Our elders carry estates on their tongues. They speak life into the rubble, into the empty. Where I'm from, the vacant buildings tell stories the white folk won't. They hold history in the hollow of their happiness. Yes, they are happy. Their memory banks only know melanin. Mama say they used to tear the floor up on city nights. Lights would beckon their temples to this body, and everyone danced to its heartbeat if you listen. These days, you can hear the wind whispering between burnt wood. It plays the tune our ancestors cut rugs to. You can still hear Eddie running through the halls at night, his voice drowning. You can sip the same bottle God pulled Paul out of hell. We all fighting temptations, racists, viruses, Satan one night. We danced till our souls caught fire and never came back. Sometimes I feel them. The temples in my body, they dance. They move to the melody of nostalgia. They tell me I am them and they is we, or we is we. Sound fury, sound love, sound grace, sound sweat, sound light, sound spirits, unbottled and brazen tongues, sound music, sound bodies swaying like buildings, swaying like bodies, one in the same wind. is the last time you saw a temple desecrated? What lies were you told? White folks will try to tell you a body ain't worth nothing. They find a way to use it. Somebody lied to me. Told me a building was just a building right before a white person came and turned it into a slave. Like the walls ain't store memories. Like the floors ain't birthing galaxies. Like the roof ain't a spaceship. Like we ain't never seen it open up and every soul we lost come pouring in this temple, the bloodline. Power. Cousin. It's time for a family reunion.
Wow. Okay. So I am waiting to be joined by Erika and Jahman, the babies of the group. Talk a little bit about 2000s and the 2010s as these years and moments of reckoning and awakening and growth. You both look so beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. So there are themes. I'm thinking about the themes of both of your pieces, and I'm thinking about what it means to be, what it means to come of age in the 21st century. Right? That's not my testimony. I was coming up in the 80s and the 90s. I was fully grown by the time your years are coming along. So before we get to what the Alabama and the Black of it all is, and also at this time, I want to invite our audience, if you have questions for the panelists, any of the panelists, please post them in the Ask the Question box at the bottom of the screen, bottom right-hand side. You can post questions there, and we're going to be moving into a full panel for questioning right after this. So, what memories? What do you remember the most? And because it's just the two of you, we can talk together. I don't have to separate things out. And I'm thinking about all of these years together. But what do you remember about these years, and what inspired these pieces? Right. So, like, what was momentous about the 2000s and the 2010s that informed this art? Because I think about, and Erika, you start with Y2K, and I remember Y2K, right? Everybody claimed the world was going to end, computers won't go to work. Do y'all remember that?
Yes.
And nothing happened, and people were like, "Oh, I was just playing," and it was like, what? Like, people,
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, something did happen. When I was thinking about what I wanted to do for the early 2000s, admittedly, that was an awkward stage of where I was finding myself and really hitting the identity quest pretty hard. But I thought about how we tried to put things in capsules, preserving memories. And at that time, it was very big and important to do these found footage videos, to record everything. And I remember having my little flip phone, and as soon as something came up, take a little picture or whatever, and being prepared to keep these memories for a later date. And then it came to the point to where I stopped looking at the memory. That shift after Y2K for me was an awakening, where when you wake up, good and bad things happen. Yes, you're prepared to face a new reality, but also that moment before you fully accept the fact that this is the new way that you have to live in. It's scary. It might be frustrating. You might miss the old you, and that was that moment for me. So going back and looking at pictures from that time period, it was the first time in years to acknowledge, wow, that me existed, and all of these lies that we're told about rejecting who you are as you're growing up, especially as Black people. Right? Everything's so wrong about us until we're woken, and we're cultured and those type of things. But going back and looking at that Erika and seeing that she was powerful in her own way, and losing her might be why you feel lost today in areas. Made everything come together for them.
Awesome.
And I think for mine, the biggest thing was, I think of the year 2014 when we're thinking of the 2010s, and I think of the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think of now, even as we're moving into the 2020s, we see like a growth of this, but this idea of like woke culture, which is kind of built on questioning everything. Yeah. So like what I wanted to do, especially with that theme being good trouble, I wanted to think of all the ways that I had been troubled or had troubled my growing up. Like I really related to what Erika was doing in the 2010s, because I was like, or the 2000s, I was like, oh my goodness, I remember this like so much. Like I was like, some of your pictures I thought were mine because the color grade, I was like, oh my gosh, did all of our photos look like this? I was like, wow, I thought these were my photo with the yellow text at the bottom with the date. I was like, these are mine. When we get to the 2010s, it's like I have a certain idea of religion. That's now troubled. Like I have a certain idea of what activism is. That's now troubled. I have a certain idea of what home is. That's now troubled. And then when we look at like poverty in relation to gentrification and those things, even those have been troubled. So that's where kind of I really wanted to focus on these moments where I was like, oh, I thought things were this way, especially being somebody who moved to Alabama in the 2010s. I moved to Alabama in 2014, literally. In 2014, I moved to Alabama. So I had all of these thoughts that I was bringing with me, and that other people had instilled in me, like, this is what is the South. And I'm like, I don't think it's that, but I'll go down there and we'll find out. And then like all of those things, all of these troublings happened while I was here in Alabama. And I learned so much more about myself and about all those different themes.
Right. So what is Alabama and what is Black about your pieces? What makes it Alabama Black? What makes it Alabama and what makes it Black, right?
I thought long about this question. I think I've come to the realization that my Black body, being from Alabama, makes everything that I do Black in Alabama. And that's a powerful statement for me to say because it wasn't always my truth. When I was growing up in Alabama, I was the white accent girl. I was the one that wrote poems under the tree, the one who was deeply emotional about everything, that noticed the way that flowers bloomed on a fence and took a note of it on, in my next piece of work. So that was told to me so much that it wasn't Black or Alabama. And I guess I don't fault too much the people I was around, because isn't that the consciousness of being Black and being in a Black body, is being told what that Black body is and what it isn't by everybody but yourself.
Right.
Yeah. So I moved away, and I guess I have the opposite experience of you, Jahman, is where I'm from Alabama, and I ran away from that in so many ways. I went to Georgia, I played in New York for a while and eventually moved to Los Angeles. And while I would always say, I'm so proud of the fact that I'm from Alabama, my work would always seek to erase those things. So I started writing in this way that felt universally specific to Blackness. So not just specific to my country ghetto blackness, but just blackness, right? So, and that post was good. It was very successful, but it wasn't standing out. And so I'd been in all the rooms and all the studios, known for having great dialogue, all these things, but never getting a call back until I got frustrated and just started to write and speak in rooms the way that I was grown up to speak.
Right.
That's when all the calls started to come. So it just like Alabama and Black is who I am. So the piece is Alabama and Black because I did it.
Yes.
I feel like that is the best answer right there too. I think I said it in my introduction. I said, I'm Black and I'm from Alabama. Yeah. And mine's like you said, it's a different case because I moved here. Yeah. And it's so interesting because the 2010s is when that happened for me. And I think of the biggest thing, I won't say my friend's name, but it was his mom. I remember telling her, I'm going to the University of Alabama. She said, Alabama, do they know they free yet? And I was like, so this is how people, like every time, and I'm from Kansas. So every time I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to Alabama. They'd be like, why Alabama? Why Alabama? And the answer, of course, was the money for the scholarship. But when I got here, but when I got here, it was so interesting because I was awakening in so many different ways, and I had thoughts already too of what it meant to be Alabama and what it meant to be Black, and these were built off of A, never having been to Alabama, and B, having this warped idea of Blackness that was built off of, like Erika said, what everybody else was telling me what it was. And in Kansas, where I was, it was all white people. So what white people told me Blackness had to be. So I got down to Alabama. I was around Black people who were from Alabama, and I learned so much. And that's what the piece of, I learned so much.
Alabama Black folk taught you how to be Alabama and Black, right? And you guys kind of anticipated where I was going to go next, because I was like, I'm feeling like I'm in the classroom now and kind of prodding you, right? Like, okay, tell me more, unpack this, because what does it mean? So you're saying that you're inherently Alabama and Black because you're from or you live in Alabama and you're Black, but what does that mean, right? Because we think about, because what does it mean to be Alabama? What does it mean to be Black? So you're saying how you've kind of been playing around with these stereotypes that came to you, but what exactly were they, right? So I think that we know that there are assumptions, inherent assumptions and perceptions about what Blackness is and what Alabama means, because I heard the same thing when I'm from North Carolina, and I'm like, who do y'all really like? I'm from, so it's like North Carolina is a mess, right? Like North Carolina, because people were like, oh, you're moving to the place where racists are. Show me where they're not. Where can I move where I'm not? All of those not racist. Yeah. Who are we talking about, right? All of those things. So can we kind of unpack what that means? So what is Alabama? What is Black? Is Black liberation? Is Black freedom? Is Black, Jahman, from your piece, I get Black as beautiful, right? But liberation, resistance,
Resilient. That was my big word. Yeah, because
right.
I thought of Alabama, I thought of literally that idea of resilience, not only from whiteness, but more so from myself, and like how it was resilient of the thoughts and ideas I had of what it was going to be, and then what it was. And I also thought of resilience in terms of challenging, because Alabama historically has always been one to challenge. And those last two pieces kind of talk a lot about those in a more straightforward way. I think that people think of resilience because we think of Black Lives Matter. I'm talking about social media. In that last piece, I'm talking about resilience in terms of history, buildings, and owning. When we think of Inslee specifically, like they're doing a lot to buy up properties and to make sure that gentrification isn't something that will happen in the Inslee neighborhood. And then in the first piece, which is humorous at first, you've been known to twerk for Jesus, right? but it's talking specifically about historically how we've seen religion as like this respectable, it's like the respectability, but it's like resilient in that we're going to take these things that we've always done, like twerking, right? And that we can even trace back in the Bible with David tearing off his clothes and dancing and all of this stuff of undignified.
Dance
right?
like David dance.
Exactly. David was throwing it back to Jesus. So like, look, we gotta understand. Like taking this, I think of resilience in that way. And I'm gonna let Eric, you jump on from there.
Yeah, and I agree. When I was thinking about what does civil rights mean for that specific decade, and for my interpretation, for my generation, I think being Black and being an activist in your Blackness, it's not just talking about history. It's normalizing everydayness. It's normalizing being Black in every aspect of life. So when I finished my project, I realized I hadn't done what I traditionally do, which is write this deep poem that has all of these metaphors that drip with historical reference. And I said, I am history.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my Blackness means now. And I don't just think it's unique to me. I think in order to be an activist in our Black bodies today, we have to stand in making content, making voices, making waves, making stories that speak to just that. So to me, being Alabama and Black is growing up with a big family. It's knowing how to tell stories as a means of communicating not just how I feel, but to connect with the people around me. It's why it's speaking with my dialect. It's not leaning away from going into those voices and into those things that I considered as stereotypes previously, because I mean, that's just who I am. It's just, what is beautiful about the way that I speak, the way that the folks, from my hood speak. It's about leaning into just seeing a Black woman's physical presence and body on screen as the depiction of activism. Like, that's enough. And to me, I think that's what Alabama and Black end up being translated as is it authentically Southern and speaking to those nuanced experiences that often get forgotten because we only think about racism and the South as a monolithic place. Black people exist there. We will exist there forever. And to erase the everydayness of our existence is, to me, why we're not making the most progress when it comes to civil rights in the South. You can't just think that the opposite of racism is erasure.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's a bar.
That's a bar. Like, what do I say after that? Yes. The opposite of racism is not erasure. Yes. Listen, y'all make me so proud. I'm just over here beaming because I knew you win, because I know you finna, like, I'm just, but I think that, I think my last question, or the thing that I'll kind of connect it to. So you guys are talking about, you kind of launched us into the 21st century, and it has, the 21st century, our conceptions and ideas about race have both changed and been the same, right? And so we saw in the 90s clip, for example, in Dr. Upshaw's presentation, where we had this clip of this man talking about what would happen to him if he stole $20. And then we think about 2020, George Floyd being murdered for being accused of having a counterfeit $20 bill, right? And so it's like, wow. And we think about, so those riots, and then the protest of the past couple of years. What does 21st century Blackness mean to you? What does justice look like for you? What is it going, like if you had to push forward and think about, prophesy, right? Think about the next 10 years. What will 2020 be known for? Or the 2020s, what will the 2020s be known for? I'm sorry.
Hopefully, at the very least, it will be known for revolutionizing the idea of Black women and Black womanhood not being synonymous with strength, and Black women not being these superheroes that must be charged with carrying the emotional weight of every cultural group besides itself. So I grew up being told not to be emotional. I mean, I don't know if you're like a zodiac sign or not, but I'm an Aquarius and we're known to be stony. Like we don't emote. And I hold true to that. If you have gotten me to cry, then I must hate you and get rid of you so no one ever hears from you. And it's just what it is. But all of my art this year and in the 2020s has been the opposite of that. It's been about vulnerability and about exposing myself in ways that I normally wouldn't, because that to me is the activism that is the most important. It's normalizing the lives of Black women in spaces. So if our lives are taken, if we are afraid, if we are alarmed or threatened, we won't be seen as so far from human that we don't need protection or support or visibility. And I know I could say a million more insightful things, but to me, if it seems like that simple, then you definitely are not plugged in to what it is like to live in this world as a Black female presenting individual.
Absolutely.
Yes. I would say that one of the big things when I'm looking at the 2020s is this, and it kind of ties in actually, Erika, what we were talking about. I think of that as breaking out of boxes. I think that we have done a lot of box building. We built a lot of, I mean, we are at like, especially when we look at the 2010s, we see identity politics. We see like really this fight to establish boxes that I think that now we're doing a lot of breaking down what this is defined as, or this is defined as, or this is defined as. And I think of it like even in this little discussion that we've had, like and Dr. Boylorn, you know my thesis of Black Enough and this idea of Blackness is infinitely possible. There is no answer. And I was trying not to say that. So there is no answer, but like this idea we are just constantly like growing exponentially what something can and really can be. And in growing that, we're able to, who knows what possibilities exist? Because it's like, okay, the Black woman isn't just this, or the Black man isn't just this. Like this, the Black person isn't just this. Like as we keep on expanding and breaking down those boxes, I see, that's my answer.
Infinite. Awesome. Thank you both. Thank you both so much for this conversation and for the beautiful art you created. I am going to be exiting right now, and we'll be inviting the other three panelists to join you and Mary for Q&A. So audience members, please submit your questions in the Ask a Question box. I'm going to submit some questions because I know. I know what's up. Love you. Bye.
Now it's just us. This is okay.
I know. The babies of the group.
Awesome. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're still waiting on Qiana to join us, but we're going to do a little bit of Q&A. So once she gets in, we will get started. Okay, while we're trying to connect, Erika, I have a question specifically for you. In your intro, I believe you talked about how memory is like a love language. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what that means to you personally and your family?
Yes. So recently in April, I lost my grandmother, and my grandmother just meant the world to me. Growing up in the South and growing up as a Black woman, you know that you're usually raised by a series of Black women. It's literally a village that has a hand in shaping and crafting who you'll be as an adult. And so when I went home for the funeral, as sad and as brokenhearted as my family was, we saw each other and started to tell these stories. We started to share these memories from the past. and completely filled with love and expression and hope and joy. And so I guess that means to me that no matter what the circumstance is, we will be able to share those intimate moments with each other. And even if I can't say I love you, sometimes it's hard, right, to actually say those words and tell people exactly how you feel. I can share a memory of a moment of love between us, and you'll know exactly how I feel.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So here's a good one to get us all started off. Can you guys talk about the overlap you saw between the various decades, between your performances, and anybody feel free to jump in and start us off?
I would say one of the things that resonated with me while, particularly with the last two pieces, was the connection to the people of Alabama and or to being out in Alabamian, however you're defining that. One thing that I thought about, there's a poem that Nikki Giovanni has, and everybody who knows me knows that like I stand real hard for Nikki Giovanni. It's a poem that she had on her album. I think it's called I Love Chocolate, The Way That I Love Chocolate. It's 1976, and it's called the Alabama Poem. And there's a line couple of lines in that poem. One is when she says she was talking to this old man, and he says, my hands seen more than all them books that they got at Tuskegee. And the other was she was talking to a woman, and the woman says, my feet seen more than your eyes ever gonna read. And so for me, like that whole concept of Alabama and Alabamians and Black Alabama specifically being this, at the end of the day, like knowledge and intellectual pursuits and creativity, all of that, like we're inclusive and accepting, and degrees and all of these things, like those are cute or whatever, like we people appreciate them, they respect them, they understand them. But at the end of the day, when I go home to my rural town where there were like 65 people in my graduating class, it's like, that's Candy. Like I'm not Dr. Cutskibbins, I'm not any of that, that's Candy. And it's like, so at the end of the day, it is still this really down home, down to earth thing, that it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your level of education or achievement or whatever, come on home and sit with us and talk with us and be a real person. So I think I got that in all of the pieces, whether we were talking about the joy, the pain, the memory, all of it is that come home, sit on our porch, sit on our step, whatever you want to call it, and have a conversation, and let's see who you are as a real person. And I think for me, like that was a connecting piece, and that's very much Alabama for me.
I agree. It felt like in everything that we were saying, even in the moments of realness, the moments that might be a bit hard to discuss, there's an ever-present sense of intersectionality where you can be joyful, you can talk about sorrow and burden, you can be warm and nostalgic, you can be country, you can be all of these different things and still be Black and still be Southern, still be Alabama.
Okay, anybody else about the overlap between the performances? Okay, so what made you guys an artist, a creative? What motivates you to create what you create?
That is an interesting question. It's because when I think of what motivates me as an artist, I feel like the inspiration comes from just the act of living. So some days I'll write a poem about like we just talked about, the intersectionality. I might, go and like do some research, and I'm like, oh, I'm so invested in this, I want to write a poem about this. some days the cicadas are loud, and I want to write about cicadas and how they literally are the sound, like they are the sound of the sound, like it's cicadas. So I think it just really like on the day, like it could be any sort of inspiration. But I feel like as an artist, I guess that's just the way I'm wired, where it's like, I think Erika, you had mentioned this in your talk where you were like, you noticed like the way the flowers had looked on the, that might be it. That might be, I'm just looking at the,
That's it. Right. You could literally give me a word, or what I've been known to do my entire life, fighting against it, is telling a joke about anything. In any situation, I mean, like having a full comedy roast session, impromptu. And I think the artist just does that. If it's in you, it's in you. I definitely think that there's a degree of artistry that you must learn, right? You have to work at your craft. But I guess both mindset people are going to kill me for saying this, but I do believe that it's just something about you, if you choose to live this life where you're so open to your emotion and to the emotions of others, and to communicating that on a regular basis, that is instilled upon birth. It's just there.
What about you, Dr. Upshaw? What is your drive to create? What made you, pursue this path?
So that's a good question. My mom was a teacher, and so we living in rural Alabama, Mama decided that she wanted to expose me to things, right? Because it's a very small town. We live 20 miles from town. And so she wanted me to take lessons, and I took piano lessons and voice lessons and dance lessons. And then I majored in music in school, and Mama said, that was just supposed to be exposure. I thought you'd grow up and get a real job. And so she's like, she didn't expect this. It was just supposed to be to make you go around it. That was all it was supposed to be. But I feel like being an artist is my calling. It's not only my gift and it's not only my talent, but it's my calling. Calling to use the arts to tell the story, whatever the story is. Whether it's singing the story or acting out the story or playing the story or whatever it is that's telling the story. And I think that it's really important. And so that's right now it depends on what's going on, but right now and for the past couple of years, my mother has been my driving force, and trying to tell her stories before they're gone. So that has been a big thing in understanding, and I'm learning again more about Black and Alabama Black through this idea of my mom's stories. And that's driving me to explore my art in different ways. So yeah, that's what's happening.
Beautiful. Roderick, what do you love most about being Black and being from Alabama?
The culture is rich with so many levels of everything. Like I love to promote my chocolate. You should see me out here. It's amazing, especially in Tuscaloosa. I stay on Pretentious Avenue, and I just walk down, and they don't know what I've been through, but they can see it in my walk. They gotta ask me about the story. Like I'm a walking storyteller, and being Black is a part of that story, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And the part of me I'm so proud of being from Alabama, because I found people here that just absolutely love me in just 2 years more than I have in Florida. Y'all hear a lot of noise, or is it just me? Is that my sounding like that, you think? Now it stopped.
I don't think I'm going to mute everybody else while you're talking to see if that
was somebody else. I'd be doggone. Now, who was that? Now we got to figure out who it was, because somebody is on a motorcycle and on the call at the same time. One of y'all sitting on a motorcycle right now. I know it. Right, right. But yes. The idea of being from Alabama, I'm so proud of, because just like, and I saw Dr. Ole on the call too, and we had a moment in class, in one of his classes, where he talked about how just being from the South, people automatically think that you're stupid. And I'm just one of the ones that was outcast, and I love to prove differently what people's perception is, whether it be from Alabama, whether it be black. Like I'm quick to correct people, real quick. You should see me.
Definitely. Would anybody else like to answer that question about what they love about being black and being from Alabama?
Shoot, am I hearable?
Uh-oh, can you hear me?
Oh wait, go ahead, Qiana.
Okay. Oh, I was just gonna say, the poem, it's my little signature haiku that I started my introduction with. Who in the hell said all the Southern belles were white girls? Y'all can kiss my grits. And for me, like, that's so much, I very much am that black Southern belle. And I don't even necessarily feel like I need to put black in front of Southern belle, because for me, Southern belle isn't necessarily synonymous with whiteness and shouldn't be. But because when you look that up, that's what you see. I'm like, no, I'm the black Southern belle. Like, all of the things that I feel like I learned from my mother and the black women in my community, and the one of the teachers that I mentioned, Miss Martin, who was my 7th grade teacher, she was just she had the deepest Southern drawl, and she was always pearls and heels and cinched waist and A-line and dresses, and like, she was just everything to me. And I just remember looking at her and thinking, oh, like that's it. So she was one aspect, and then my mother was the other, whereas it was the strength and the quick tongue and the making sure she took care of everybody, and then all the women in my community. So for me, that's what it is to be Alabama black, and specifically Alabama black woman. And I love all of those things about being able to show up in every space that I'm in, whether that's in the classroom or on the stage doing spoken word. I show up as that Alabama black woman all the time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Am I unmuted? Oh, oops.
Yeah, you are. Go ahead, Jahman. We have about 30 seconds left for this question, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, quick. Okay, 2 quick things then. One, like I said in my bio, I love to claim Birmingham like a stepchild whose stepmama is Beyonce. Birmingham is absolutely amazing. People always try to say stuff about Alabama, and then I always have great responses like, but is your mayor black? Or like, I go to the DMV, everybody I see is black. It's so incredible and amazing. And then people will talk about racism and stuff, and they'll talk about the South. But one of the things I'm so proud about is like, I interact, and maybe it's because I'm from Kansas, but I interact with black people every day. It's so beautiful. That's all.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I have one last question for all of you guys. If you want to share what you're up to after this, maybe 15, 20 seconds each, if you can, that would be great. And then we'll pass it over to Dr. Boylorn.
All right, I'm already unmuted, so let me just say, I'm the co-executive director of the Flourish Alabama. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping young artists bloom. We are all about the flourish. We doing a fundraiser right now. We raising $10,000 for our fall programming. Shouts out to Erika. She was one of the teachers that we had, a guest teacher this past semester. But please check us out, theflourishala.com. And our fundraiser information will be there. We're launching it. We're doing all sorts of stuff, but just donate if you can. Theflourishala.com. Yeah, that's my plug.
Okay, Erika, you want to go next?
Oh, go ahead.
Are y'all calling out names? Okay, but so I'll go next. I actually am getting ready to do a relocation back to Birmingham from Los Angeles to revive my one-woman show, The Rhythm of the Blues. And I'm going to be doing a documentary project about the semi-autobiographical nature of it, about Birmingham returning to the South, and what that entails. And I am looking for talent. I'm looking for production. I'm looking for crew. I'm bringing development back to Birmingham. We have a lot of talent in the film and television industry, and Glenda's Baby Productions will be coming back to the South to hear what everybody has to say. I guess if you want to get at me, the easiest way is to email me at Erika@glendasbabyproductions.com.
Awesome. Dr. Upshaw?
A show coming up in Atlanta in December, Cinnamon Grits. We're going to reprise that from 2019. I am working on doing a recital sometime this fall, and I'm writing a play, Mama and Me Chronicles, again talking about my mom and our journey with Alzheimer's, but also about the fact that we're descendants we can trace our descendancy from right back to slavery, and we live on land that was passed down through the end of slavery, and a house that's 110 years old. And so what stories does the house have to tell? So, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Upshaw. Roderick, you want to share what's up next for you?
I was so afraid that you were coming my way. I just graduated, and so the last 2 years I spent learning so much, and the poems and the reading. Thank y'all so much. The poems and the reading are now, trying to escape me, and it's so much to share with people back in Jacksonville, Florida, and to also bring back to Alabama, because I've been around the country over the last 8-9 years, and all of it just kind of came together when I'm on campus and I'm teaching the next star football players how to speak publicly while I'm here. So I'm just excited about life. I don't know what's next. But that's been a question everybody's been asking, because, and I don't have an answer, because I don't think I need one. God has ordered my steps so far, and I'm not afraid.
Yes.
So just keep your eye on me. Please keep your eye on me.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Okay. Qiana, do you want to share?
Yeah, I had a chance to see Cinnamon Grits in 2019, and Dr. Upshaw was amazing. So when it comes back, y'all make sure y'all go see it. But I have, and I'm gonna put it out there so that I won't back out of it. Black Pride in Atlanta. I'm going to do a small production of a play that I have called I Said, She Said, and then hopefully later on in the year or early next year, I will bring my stage play, Alabama Moonstruck, back to the stage. We started last year, and we had our first and only production the week before Atlanta went on lockdown. So we're ready to get back to the stage. That was really my passion project. So that's what I have coming up next.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you all so much. I am going to bring Dr. Boylorn back. There are still some questions in the chat and the Ask the Question section that you guys could type answers to if you wanted. So keep an eye on that. And thank you again so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I just want to thank Mary Bell, Ashley Williams, and the Kentuck Art Center for hosting this event. And I want to thank the panelists for saying yes. In some cases, before I finished asking the question, when I invited them to participate in a showcase and chat with me and some other dope artists about art, they didn't hesitate to say yes. And I am indebted to them for their generosity. On behalf of Qiana, Roderick, Allison, Erika, and Jahman, I also just want to thank our audience for inviting us and engaging in this important important conversation. I encourage you to follow and support the work of these amazing Black artists whose work is amplifying the South and the Kentuck Art Center as they celebrate the golden anniversary.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Boylorn. We really appreciate you being our primary humanities scholar this year. It's been a joy working with you. Thank you for curating and moderating this panel, and to all our panelists again for creating your wonderful work and being willing to share it with us. Alabama Black would not have been possible without the generosity of the Alabama State Council on the Arts, the Alabama Humanities Alliance, and the Department of Communication at the University of Alabama. If you want to share this event, a recording will be available on our YouTube and website in just a couple of days. And you can find us at kentuck.org or on social media at Kentuck Art. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in with us tonight, and have a great night.